to start off with, our term was extended by the city council on Tuesday night. So our term is now extended to the end of April. And I said last time, it'd be great if we set a target for ourselves of actually finishing our work by the end of March. That'd be great. And if we can't do it by then, we've got that extra month. But just to keep us moving, it'd really be good to try to target the end of March. Let's see. You know, when I sent out that material on Monday, happy Martin Luther King Jr. week, everybody. Hope you had a good holiday. When I sent out the material that I did on Monday, I was going to attach a mea culpa to it because I was really sending out stuff a week later than I had intended to. My life got in my way, and I felt a little bit bad about that, but I forgot to issue that mea culpa. So, you know, I think things happen the way they're supposed to happen. I guess I wasn't supposed to be apologetic about it. But still, I regret being late on that. And if any of you noticed that I was well behind what I had told you I was going to do at our previous meeting, you are right. I was well behind, and I really want to, you know, we're going into a stretch drive, and I really will try to not let my little life get in the way of the work we have to do. You know, it's just life. So I'll try to be follow through on what I say I'm going to do from here on in. Christy, I wanted to check with you to see whether you had anything to add about the council's action from Monday night or Tuesday.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks for asking. I was going to say that, you know, there was a comment from Alder Groupie that she's very curious to hear about our work, and I think that's resonating throughout the city. So, you know, I tried to summarize, but boy, it is broad and it's all over the place. You know, I kind of tried to, you know, it's been a little bit like pinball because, you know, one thing leads to another. And, but I think they would love to have you there, Jason, if you want to speak at a future meeting, or someone from this body. But yeah, I think people were very supportive. Just there was some curiosity, and I did mention how, like for instance, the racial covenants piece came forward, and they didn't know we were working on that. Or someone was talking about housing policy in one of the art groups, and they didn't know we were talking about that. You know, so I think that might help people understand the breadth of what we're working on too. And so, you know, it feels a little bit sometimes like they're getting ahead of us, and that's awesome. You know, we're glad they're eager, right? But I think there's just, you know, they just don't know what we're working on. So I think that communication would be great.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much. Yeah, and that seems to be a very natural reaction. Yeah. All right. I'm going to just spend see your chat note, Alicia. Huh, interesting. Okay. Yep, hang on, folks. I am going to try to take care of this access issue.
Well, Jason is doing the tech thing. I wanted to make a comment. I went through Jason's sheet on the Google Drive, and I took out our original charge, and I kind of coded how each one relates to the original charge. And all of them relate in some way to one of the original charges. Some of them relate to several of the original charges. So we can feel good that even though we kept the charges in the back of our mind as we came up with these, that they do relate back. They do correlate very well.
Good. Yeah. I did want to touch on these core beliefs that I've talked about before. And there's a reason I'm being repetitious about this. And I finally wrote them down. So as you all know, having to write things out really makes you think more carefully about what you actually mean and how you would word it so that your intentions get across. And so I wrote these out. Let me pull those up and share my screen. They are, obviously they're in that folder, but I'll share my screen here.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I got to give you a post capability. There you go. Should be able to now.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Brian. Okay. And I won't read these out loud because you all know how to read and you've kind of heard these before. But the reason I bring it up again is that as I've indicated before, I think it's important for us to lead with intentions and a vision that's very much based on values and our ethical beliefs. And that also helps to simplify our message by providing it that kind of focus. So I also think that all of us should feel comfortable expressing these beliefs. And that means you have to agree with them. So I'll get to that in a moment. But when we finish up our work, as we talk to others, I think we all want to be able to represent the work of the committee well. And to me, that means being able to tell the ethical and value-based story, and not just point to a list of recommended actions. So this is the framework that I proposed before. As you see, it is open there for comment. We can fine tune this. But I do want you to view them in that way, and we don't have to spend time talking about it tonight. We can come back to this whenever it's appropriate. View them as statements that would come out of your mouth as you express what we as a committee felt important as kind of overarching goals and a vision for Monona's future. And again, I'd like to be able to make the case for any recommendation we come up with that it supports at least one of these core beliefs. And as we develop our recommendations, if it becomes the case that these two aren't the best fit and the way we're thinking about recommendations suggest a different belief or some different beliefs, that's fine. We can talk about that. I just want us to go into the work of diving in and getting into particulars with an overarching framework in mind, even if that framework has to be adjusted later on, just to have us share some kind of focus. So I actually want to ask each of you, hopefully this doesn't seem like too big of a question. I want to actually ask each of you how you're feeling about these core beliefs right now. All I need is kind of a green light or a yellow light. You can tell me green or yellow. I'm not offering you the choice of red because we've talked about these before and nobody said, hey, these are not what we should be doing. But you may be thinking red, and in that case, just say yellow, because you will have the opportunity to change our course as we move down the line. So I'd just like to hear from each of you whether you're really feeling on board at this particular point. It's not a permanent commitment, or whether you're willing to work with these but have some reservations or think maybe something else is going to emerge that might be better. So I'm just going down how you appear on my screen, which is going to be a surprise to you, I'm sure. Marianne, can I ask you a green or yellow on these? And if you have a salient comment, go ahead and offer those. I don't want to get into too deep of a discussion, but please feel free to.
Green.
Green. Okay. Jade, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, no, I'm green. I did like Alicia added a comment about changing it possibly to Black, Indigenous, and people of color here. That part, I do like that better, if that's possible to change.
Okay. You know, I know we're going to have a discussion somewhere down the line about terminology items, and this will be one of them. Yeah, I just realized that as you speak, the order of pictures on my screen changes. Okay. But Christy, now you're at the top.
Yeah, I'm green with just some little tweaks as we move along. I really did like Karen's comment about listening. Is listen strong enough? I felt like it's a little too passive. I mean, listening's important, but it seems like we could use something a little more assertive there.
Yeah. It starts with listening, but it has to go on. It has to build from there. Yeah. Alicia, you're next.
Yeah, I think green with a couple of minor edits to the language.
Okay. Catherine?
Yeah, green with an edit or two.
All right. Jerry?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah, green with the minor changes.
Raquel?
Green, yeah.
Okay. All right. Did I get everybody? All right, great, thank you. So let us, do people want me to show that Google Sheet with the items on the screen? You all have access to it, so we could go back to, I could unshare and we go back to having bigger frames for each other. What do people prefer? Does it help to see it on the screen, or?
It would help me just as I'm taking minutes if you'd throw it up there for a quick second.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, never mind. You're talking about that one. So that, yeah, that's the huge.
Yep,
So
yep,
yep, by all
okay.
means, you can go back to the regular sharing.
Okay, everybody okay if I dispense with the sharing? Do you all have access to this? All right.
Where is that one?
It is in that same folder as the core beliefs. Do you have access to that folder?
I'm not sure I've seen that folder.
Wow, what am I doing here? Let me let me
Oh,
check.
wait, I found it. It's buried in the shared. I got it. I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you,
all right, good.
Jason.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay, so as I had described to you before, there used to be 5 categories and now there are 4. So I did a little bit of consolidation. Again, if you need to refresh your memory of some of the context for this, there is this README tab with some notes that I updated, kind of pared that README information down. And these, there is a master list with all the ideas taken from the notes from our brainstorming sessions, plus a couple or a few that came from guests who came to us during our appearances section. And then I added a topic that we've spent some time on, but actually it wasn't in the list per se. And that is, we had talked about conducting a community survey and focus groups. So on the master list, those are at the very bottom. I just did that this afternoon, number 53 and number 54. And I grouped them into group B. And so the next tab after master list just is list those 4 categories. The first one, A, centers on city action, city policies and practice. B focuses on community attitudes. And also in there is the how do we deal with conflict that inevitably can arise around these issues and will rise around some of our recommendations, I'm sure. C, this is started off as the bucket for cultural activities, but we had a few items about trying to bring forward business activity, minority-owned businesses. And I thought those were similar enough that I just threw them into this bucket C together. And then D is the idea of having, as opposed to A, which is really focusing on city government, D is about support from the community. Particularly, is there a possibility of having some kind of network that helps to elevate the voices of BIPOC folks in our community and gives them a base of support. I think what I want to do is just ask, and if you have thoughts about any of these four categories, you can bring them up as we discuss my ask. What I want us to do is see who would be interested in working on which of these buckets. And what I'd love to have happen is for small groups to be able to get together, spend some time outside of our meetings and start to put together recommendations. Now, as I've said in my notes, these lists here are a real grab bag of different things. I mean, one term I use in this description is their thoughts. Many of them are not even ideas for recommendations. They're just thoughts because they came out of brainstorming sessions we had about what our values are, what we think represents what we would see in Monona that is inclusive. So they're not all of these thoughts are actually translate directly into recommendations. So these thoughts and ideas are a basis for our work, but not to limit you. You don't have to make do with what's in here necessarily. But what I'd like to do is to see who could work on particular categories, spending a modicum of time outside of our meetings. I'm thinking that it would be really good to have some pretty solid, but still draft lists of recommendations by this time next month. That is our second meeting from now. And on February 3rd, which is our next meeting, we can take up anything. We can take an interim look at what people have been working on, or as we start working on these things, maybe it'll generate more questions and we can discuss those questions on February 3rd. But I think by February 17th, if we had a rough list that we could all look at together and start really thinking about them in terms of priorities and effectiveness, those kinds of choices we might want to make among them, that would be great.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
I was going to just mention when I was going through the different tabs and the groups, I didn't see a lot about the word education. And I think like education and exposure are two things that could almost be worked into on every one. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. I think just throw it out there, stick to the wall, see if it does.
Okay, thanks, Christy.
I guess I'm a little confused about what you'd want us to do in the work group. Is it to pare it down or summarize it? When I went through the charges A, B, C, and D that we were given, And the first one has to do about learning and education. So I had, actually, Christy, I had quite a few A's that are on there that I thought were at the gist of it were, or at the center of it was really about education. And then B is promoting engagement, and I found quite a few B's. C's were identify initiatives the city or community can work towards. And I found several of those. And like I said, some of them actually addressed all three. And there were only two that addressed D, which was make a recommendation for a charter for a formal committee. That I thought had a D component to it. So I don't disagree with the buckets that you have, Jason. I'm just not clear on how you want us to move forward with the items within these buckets. If you want us to consolidate them or
Yeah.
what did you
Well-
want us to do? And some are repeated in more than one bucket. I realized it was like, oh, there was something really close to that in another bucket. And that's true because when I went for the charges, some of them were just one of the charges. Some of them were all three of the charges were met within that.
Yeah. Well, let me say something about the charge. I want to reiterate that we don't need to be constrained by how the charge was formed. That was made very clear in, I'd say, two conversations I had with the mayor before we even started to meet, that those are to help us get a start, but it's really up to us how we want to approach our recommendations. So I would really stick to whatever structure has come out of our discussions, and to try to fit another frame of organization to try to meet that too just complicates the situation. So I wouldn't be too concerned about what's in the charge and whether we have even numbers that meet each parts of those charge. That last piece that you mentioned, we will get to. I mean, we're going to have to get to that, and that's a different sort of task that we'll get to later in our discussions about, what kind of structure after our work group should be in place and what the purpose of that structure should be. So thank you for bringing that up. As far as what to do with these lists, this is just a grab bag of stuff. I don't want to see all this stuff in the recommendations. I'm just throwing that out there as a very casual comment, but a set of recommendations that looks like a list of everything we could think of is, in my mind, going to be ineffective. And that's one reason why I'm really promoting this idea that we be able to tie anything we recommend to a value statement or core belief, because we really want our recommendations to have impact. And if it just seems like a mass of things that would be good to do, it won't have that kind of impact. So there are just lots of things. And I'm just, what I said earlier is just numerically, we can't have 3 or 4 dozen different recommendations, I don't think, my opinion, and have that be effective. So we need to have groups of people think about what recommendations will really have a long-term impact on our community, whether it's the community at large or city government. What kinds of actions can be started that have the promise of setting off some kind of long-term process of change? So some of our thoughts are going to, some of the thoughts that we had and are on these lists are going to be worthier than others in terms of having that kind of impact. And And really, these ideas are just food for thought. There may be ideas that come out of small group discussions that aren't even on this list, but kind of are generated from thinking about these lists. So I'd say this is just raw material.
Mhm.
Can I comment on that, Jason?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, so and the stuff that's here, remember, really comes from our conversations in our first handful of meetings where we were doing those exercises to kind of get aligned as a group and to kind of dig deeper in to identify what the problems are that we're talking about and what's important to you all as a committee. So these things kind of came out of that conversation. So if that helps to connect with them a little bit, I think when you're looking at these categories, to think about what this might look like in the final report. So kind of how Jason was saying, what do we want to happen? What do we want to tell the council needs to happen? And you can think about that if it helps to think about what do you want done in the next 6 months to a year? What do you want to happen within 5 years? And then what's a more long-term goal? So you can make recommendations that are either, they can be completely separate in those timeframes, or you might have one recommendation that has first, we need to do this in the year so that by 5 years we can do this. So ultimately we can have this outcome. So that's another way to think about it. So basically in these categories, taking what's written there and think about how they could be combined or summarized into a recommendation. And then obviously anything else that's not there, like Jason said, that comes up in conversation can go in. We're definitely not limited, but just kind of getting closer to that. What would you want to read? How would you want to read it? If you were not on this committee and a citizen that was picking up this list, or someone who's going to read the newspaper article that's going to come out when this list is submitted, what would make most sense to you?
Thanks, Karen. And I think I will send out shortly, and I mean it this time, if I don't do this shortly, I'm going to jump off a bridge. It's going to be a really low bridge, and I'm going to wait till it's warm, but I'm going to do that. I'm
The
gonna
fire
put an
department
air
already had their
mattress
ice rest.
underneath the bridge. But yeah, I will come up with some kind of framework, what the purpose is. I think as you think of recommendations, let's try to have everyone answer these questions. What is the action? What is the purpose? What's the expected result? And, I think you're thinking about immediate term and medium term, long term is good, Karen. Who needs to be involved? So we can all kind of use a common structure when we think out our possible recommendations. And also, yeah, something that I think, Karen, you had mentioned in a check-in conversation between you and me was really helpful to me. And I think I mentioned it last time, but these don't necessarily have to be all detailed out. In fact, we have really come to understand how much we can do in this work group. And the next step may be for, after the city council decides what it thinks about our recommendations, is for there to be other groups that are responsible for fleshing out implementation plans. So we don't have to feel the burden of figuring out exactly how something would get done. We want to set something in motion, and we can call on other people. They may be existing committees or commissions or new hybrid groups that are put together, including people who might have particular expertise that we might not have enough of around the table here. So that can go, that kind of working out the details can go for a next step. So don't get hung up too much in trying to understand how exactly a recommended action would work out. So can I collect, what I'd like to do is have volunteers for each of these groups, these categories, so that, and then for each group, I'd like to have a person volunteer to be the convener of an offline or, a non-work group meeting conversation about these. And, I know many of us are really busy. I just ask you to do what you can, do what's possible for you. But if you can devote some time outside of these meetings to start shaping up lists, that would be terrific. So let me just leave it open for the next few minutes and see what people would express interest in.
I
You're
would
free.
like to be part of the committee that is working on elevating the voices of people of color. I think it was the last one you read on the list.
I think it was. I know which one you're talking about. Yes, right. The community-based one, a network of support. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to be on that one.
I was going to say, feel free to volunteer for more than one. Not just to you, Raquel. Not because you went first.
I think I'm interested in the culture and business one.
Okay, great, Alicia. Thanks.
Either A or B. I feel like I'm out of my element for expertise, even though we talked about not looking for someone with expertise with C and D. So I think A or B for me, depending upon what you need me for.
Okay, thanks, Marianne.
And also have a question for Karen. Since I'm on Nehemiah Zoom, can I Zoom on my own with other people? Because I know you guys canceled my regular Zoom to put me on the Nehemiah Zoom.
Yeah, I think oh yeah, you can use it however. I can never remember how the features cross over, but the longer meeting, you definitely have that. So
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. Yours to use as you see fit for the
Okay.
duration.
Thank you.
I was going to volunteer for B, particularly because that speaks to about the conflict issue, which I'm interested in.
Great. Thanks, Catherine.
This is Jerry. I'm interested in B and C. And also I was going to give a suggestion if there is a lead for every group, and if they could maybe also just send an invite to whoever's interested in listening in or being a part of the other groups, that they could, somebody wants to participate in all four, that they can.
Yeah.
But if there's I know we all want to at least commit to one. But like I said, there's maybe a couple, 2 or 3 that I would like to be a part of, or at least be in the conversation with.
Yeah, great. We will do that, Jerry. Yeah, actually, hello, Chief. And Jade and Christy, what do you think?
I think I'd have the most impact in D, but I was very interested in A. I don't know if I'm qualified. It was more, I think, an educational thing. I'm very interested in the housing aspect. I would love to do more translations for the city if needed, to have that available. So I was drawn to A, just didn't know if I was very qualified for a lot of this stuff in A, but D I felt more qualified for.
Okay, great, Jade. I've got a ruling. You are qualified for A, so okay, so we're good there.
Yeah, and I like them all. So, but I don't have time for all that. But I'm really drawn to culture and business at top of the list, and then maybe leaning toward A, I think, as another option, if I was.
Okay. All right. Great. I'm interested in all of them too. Let's see. So B's pretty, A and B are pretty well covered. Oh, that's good. We have at least 2 on all of them. All right, I'm gonna wait. I am interested in all of them, but I will assign myself to at least 2 of these. For category A, could I have one of you, Marianne, Jade, or Christy be the convener for that? That means just starting off, the deal of getting folks together. And while you're thinking about that, let's see, Group B, we've got Marianne again, Catherine, and Jerry.
I could do it.
Beat me to it.
You got it. I'll do C.
Okay, I was looking down when somebody made a mistake and said, you beat me to it, and probably is regretting it now. Who was that?
So I think Jerry just said, I'm going to do B. Is that right?
Yeah, I could do B.
And then Jerry said he was going to do C.
Wait a minute, who?
Jerry.
I could lead B or C, either one.
All right. All right, come on, folks.
I'll go back and pick up A, but on the city policy part, I'm going to be picking Christie's brain a whole lot.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is just to make sure, there's a meeting time for people to get together. What I'm asking for now. All right, Marianne A, Jerry B, still looking for C, Alicia or Jerry. Alicia, can you handle that?
I was gonna say, I cannot be trusted right now because school starts for us next week. So
Okay.
I'm like buried at work and my brain is real focused on that. I can if I have to, but I might need some reminders.
So Jason, I think I said I would do B. So it's Catherine on B.
Oh, you were the one. Okay. All right. I missed
And
that.
then Jerry said he would take the lead on C.
Okay, right. Okay, terrific. All
Thanks,
right,
Jerry.
great. Jade or Raquel, can you convene D? You're friends, so I'm going to let one of you turn the other in.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that.
I'm sorry, Jade, was that you? Or was that
No,
Raquel?
Raquel.
Okay. All right, thank you. Great. All right, we'll get this all kind of summarized and out to you soon. And yeah, again, let's try to aim for having a good draft of recommendations to look at our mid-February meeting, but that doesn't mean to wait till the second week of February to start talking about them. Please, I know you're all very busy, but if you can get a start and develop some momentum as soon as possible, that'll really help this process going along.
Jason, can you remind us who's in each group for the leaders so we know who to hit up for a meeting?
Yeah, so
Yep.
what I've got, excuse me, what I've got for the minutes is for group number A or number 1, city policies, Marianne Reed, who's the lead for that one, Jade and Alder Goforth. Then for group number 2 or group B, Catherine Orr is the lead, Jerry and Marianne Reed. And group number 3 or C, which is cultural business activities, I have Alicia, Jerry, and Elder Goforth. And then group number 4 or D, network of support from community, I have Raquel and Jade. And Raquel is the lead for that one.
And as I said, I will add myself to at least 2 of those groups. All right, any last thoughts on that? We are right on time. I really appreciate this, everybody. Nice work. Any last questions on that particular?
Jason, I just went and typed in each leader at the top of each of those pages,
Oh, okay.
those tabs, just so we would know.
Great, great. Thanks very much. Okay. Terrific. Well, we will now turn our attention to a special guest we have with us, Police Chief, incredibly special, Brian Cheney Austin. Thank you for coming and spending the time with us, Chief. Our new chief is such an important new leader for our community and makes this a cooler place to live than it already was. So very happy about that. And again, we really look forward to hearing from you and appreciate the time you can spend with us. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Chief. Well, let me, just so we're kind of polite about this, let me have everybody just, even though you can see their names, let me make sure you can hear them say hello to you. So it's going to be very artificial. Again, so we don't stumble over each other. I'm going to call on you to say hi and then say the name. And we'll check to see you're saying the name that's written under your box there, okay? So Alder Goforth, could you go first?
Bonjour, Chief Cheney Austin, nice to see you. I thought I'd go with a native language. How about that? We can all speak in our native languages.
Mary Ann.
Hi, Chief. Good to have you see you. Good to have you in our meeting. Mary Ann Reed.
Jade.
Hi, Chief Austin. My name is Jade Sachs, and I work for the Monona Grove School District, and the focus on the Spanish-speaking families. So looking forward to meeting you and very excited that you're in Monona.
Thank you. Raquel.
Hello, Chief. My name is Raquel Diaz. Welcome. I just want to welcome you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Alicia.
There, I'm Alicia Hazen. I work at UW-Madison as Director of Career Services and have lived in Monona for 15 years.
Catherine.
Hi, Chief. I'm Catherine Orr. We met, I think on, I can't remember what day it was, but we walked around the.
We sure did.
What was that? What day was that? I'm trying to
15th.
remember what, Juneteenth. Yes, thank you. So we've met. So hi again.
Hi.
Jerry.
Hello, Chief. My name is Jerry Chapa. Lived in Monona for about 11 years.
Okay.
And you know Karen?
Hi, Karen. Hi, Doc. How are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Good.
You probably said hi to Brian pretty recently.
Just had him sign a form for me. So yes. Hi, Brian. Well, thank you all. Very nice to meet you. For those who I haven't met, and I apologize it's taken me so long, actually. So thank you for having me. Brian knows this. The alder knows this. It's very dangerous of you, Jason, to give me the floor without a time limit. But I will try to. I will try to be brief. I'm really here to introduce myself. Give you maybe a little brief history, because I think that it helps define who I am and some of the philosophy I bring to our police department, and maybe it gives you a little bit more clues as to where I want to take us with respect to public safety and now being part of the public safety team. But also maybe recap some of the initiatives that have been done in the next 6 months, which is just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of more work to do, a lot of things that we need to accomplish. And lastly, a plea for help. There's some things that I think that those of you who are on this committee, or you may know others who might be helpful in some of these initiatives and these endeavors that that I'm bringing forth. So just a little bit about me. I promise I won't go too long. Chicago kid, born and raised on the north side, a single parent home. I have an older brother, 10 years older, so I was his WWF ragdoll as a kid growing up. My mom is Puerto Rican, so yo hablo un poco de español, but she would totally rag on me in my rusty Spanish. And so would my abuelita, God bless her soul, but I try. And so as many opportunities as I can be put in that environment helps me a lot. But I also I know in my experience, it certainly helps with community engagement and help bridging some of the divide that exists in our community. I right out of college, second job out of college, I joined the Madison Police Department. I was there for 19 years under several different chiefs, sort of rose to the ranks, did everything from homicide cases, led those to traffic enforcement, to community engagement roles, and oversaw all of those as a lieutenant and as a captain, where I ended up before I saw this awesome opportunity, life-changing, to be honest, that opened up here for Monona. It's funny, I've been pretty open about how much I brag about this place. We have our challenges, to be sure, but there are really good people here, as you know, who are in it for the right reasons and who really want to help make this a safe place for all, and for it to be a more welcoming place. So I would hope that you will find that I certainly am not without my faults. I will screw up. I have screwed up. Hopefully I won't fall on my face when doing so. And I've been a cop for 20 years, right? So I may be blinded by some things because of my professional experience, but I am a person of color. I am a person who grew up with not a lot of money. I'm a person who grew up with a strong woman in his life. And so I come with I think, a certain perspective. And so my goal as a police chief here, that I've been so lucky to have held down for 6 months now, are three things. And all of the members of this police department, or your police department, know this well by now. We're focusing on community engagement, making sure that we do our best to make ourselves present, available, and visible in the community. Some of the initiatives that I've implemented have been, I'll say it, sort of forced. What I mean by that is that I've mandated some things to really encourage staff to take part. Hopefully they're following their leader, right? Because I've been wearing the tread off of my soles, partly because I'm not an office person, even though I took an office job-ish. But I love getting out, interacting with people, meeting people, even people who disagree. And trust me, I've met many, but that's okay. And to have those discussions, I think, is important. I love the fact that you're at least able to have a discussion. We have likely very much the same end goal, and it's just a different route about getting there, right? But we can respect the differences, and at the end of the day, I work for you, so I think it's incumbent on me to at least listen and to try to take whatever opinion it is to heart. Community engagement, the mandatory portion of that that I was referencing is that I've directed that each staff member has to engage in at least one event per quarter for a quarter of the year that has been identified as a community engagement event, and that does not need to be limited to the city of Monona. And the community events goal is to have opportunities for staff to interact with members of the community, hopefully diverse members of the community, and hear stories and hear about experiences. And maybe there can be some cross exchange and learning that takes place in that process. That's my hope in that. And I think that that's what we'll find. I hope what we'll find is that folks won't limit themselves to that one mandatory per quarter experience, that they will find it to be fun. They will find it to be challenging. They'll find it to be something that they're looking forward to do. And even though it's been 20 days of this new rule that the new guy has passed along, we have had people take me up on that. And we have had folks actively seek out, actively ask, hey, does this qualify, chief? These certain community engagement opportunities. We'll hope that, I'm hopeful that that will continue to be a trend. Training staff is second, so community engagement and then training staff. We have a good crew here of women and men who, many of whom risk their lives every day for folks they don't know. And I'm very humbled at the sacrifice that they're willing to make and that they do make every day. And I want to make sure that we give them all the tools in their belt so that they can be successful. Their success leads to our safety as a community, leads to folks feeling safe in our community. And so there's some training that needs to happen with that. And so seeking out the training under the budget that I have, that is top-notch training, can be a challenge, but there's opportunities there. And so working with the policymakers and our city administrator and the mayor and others to help sort of identify the priorities in this department is something that I've been focusing on since my start here in June. And thank you to our council and city administrator and the mayor, who have been very supportive when it comes to some of the prioritizations of training that I've put forth to include racial equity and similar training that has been financially supported by the city. And I think it's critical. So training staff and getting them additional opportunities to learn, giving them more opportunities to understand and appreciate history. Karen, I'm gonna give a shout out. I heard about it, but I actually experienced it. The Justified Anger course put on by Nehemiah was very impactful here. For those of you who don't know, all of the department heads took part in that course. And even though it was online, it was good. I will tell you that the exchanges, and you know this, you folks have been around, the exchanges that take place in the small group and the stories that are told, or the I don't know, or I wasn't aware, or wow, that's new to me. And at least in my group, and Brian had his own group, was extremely beneficial. And you can hear it in their voices. I learned something. I'm a brother. I learned something. I took that, and I took the course in college. I learned something. And to be able to walk away with that experience and saying, wow, like I'm 43 years old. This is amazing. And how have I lived life this long without that exchange and without that knowledge? And I don't want to speak for the others necessarily, but at least in my small group, they were vocal. The other city manager, city department heads, very vocal about how beneficial that was. And I think as a consensus, we all agreed that we're looking at ways to sort of expand that beyond just the department heads, because we really see that as beneficial for all city staff, particularly in my case, forward-facing, public interacting staff, right? It's important. So that's training. The other tenet, and something that I've been very much focusing on, is hiring and recruiting. Hiring and recruiting a qualified and diverse workforce is so important for us, our community. I think you all can appreciate it because you're on this committee, but working with persons who are different than you, who have experienced things different than you, maybe that you have in your upbringing or in your personal life, only makes us better. It only makes us understand and appreciate differences, understand even better different cultures and et cetera. So again, I know I'm preaching to the choir. And we've already experienced that here in hiring the 2 hires that I've been able to accomplish here as chief thus far. One for a vacancy for a police officer, actually 3, I should say, I have 3. 2 for vacancies of police officer and 1 for a vacancy of a dispatcher. All 3 of whom are women, which is wonderful. 1 of whom is a minority. And even as short time as that has been, and Alder Goldforth and I were just talking about this, it has changed things up here at the Monona PD, and their interactions and their presence has certainly had a good, healthy, positive influence here for your police department. We need more. We need to expand that more. And I've been working with our front office admin, Leah, who's wonderful, and others, the alders who've given suggestions, and others in the community who I've met on the street, tearing my souls off, or have come in here just to get other ideas about different recruiting opportunities with a limited budget, right? Those opportunities exist. And so my job now is to sort of challenge the status quo. Let's reach outside the box a little bit. Let's be comfortable going to BSU events and sororities and fraternities of Black, Latino, Asian, Native communities. And let's, have conversations about how cool it would be for you to be a police officer or a dispatcher for the city of Monona. There's some training that needs to be done here, because I don't know if we've, many of folks who have been in, at least in this department, have had that experience of recruiting. So I will need to focus on that while also continuing to build on this list of opportunities in which we can help with recruiting and trying to convince folks that this is a noble profession. It's something I've enjoyed, not without its challenges for sure, but something that I've very much enjoyed in the 20 years I've been doing this. And so with all of that comes sort of operational changes that I've implemented, and I'm continuing to look for advice and counsel to expand on. Part of that counsel comes from groups like this, I'm hoping. I am developing a sort of an advisory group to the chief that I think one of you so far is a member of. We'll have our first meeting soon, I promise. I just need to get everybody on board, represented by young persons and some who've been around the sun a few more times than I, but also diverse viewpoints, but diversity with respect to culture and ethnicity as well, which is important, and within the LGBTQ community, plus community. So the goal in that is just to have folks to bounce ideas off of. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. Am I off the cuff? Am I off the wall? Will this work here? Should it work here? What are some of the things that you wish we could have done better or have implemented? And I'll let you know if it's practical or not based on my budget, or if we can think outside the box, or if we need to do some more plug your ears, Alder Goldforth, but advocating to our policymakers behind the scenes and say, hey, this is something that we really want to happen. So that's I can't do this alone, nor I don't think the community expects me to do this alone. So I've reached out to a group of about a dozen folks who I've had the privilege of meeting in my short time here, and they all have said they're on board. So I'm looking forward to getting input from them, but also, like I said, groups like this and every other folk that have either called, emailed, or have stopped by to interact, and that's great. Expanding Dane County Restorative Court and our participation with the Restorative Court. I'm very proud, but it's also frankly quite embarrassing that we have to be recognized for the first time in the history of our department to have made referrals in 2021 to the Dane County Restorative Court. something that should be expected, given that we've had an agreement with restorative court for some time. But hey, I guess with change comes change, right? So I welcome it. But expanding that to 12 to 16-year-olds, something I've had a recent conversation with some of the leaders within the juvenile justice system here in Dane County, Andre Johnson and others. And there's some legal sort of work that needs to be done to make that happen, but at least the city staff, the municipal judge, we're in the middle of a court clerk right now, but the prior court clerk, I as the department head for the police department, and the support of council and the mayor at least have all on board in supporting that. Yes, we need to expand this. And so what that looks like and sort of getting legal involved is a process, but it's in the works. And so there's progress there to expanding restorative court to 12 to 16-year-olds, which currently is in existence in Monona. Redefining the role of an SRO. I know some of you have met me or talked to me or have emailed me about that very topic, and I believe it's important. Here's where the cop in me comes in, because I do see a role of an SRO if that role is well defined and if that relationship is managed. And so redefining that role as a advocate, as somebody who's there to support the student, who's there to support staff and parents and guardians, but also to help protect the kids and make kids that feel safe. And for those who don't feel safe, to try to bridge that divide, to try to work on ways in which we can make folks feel more comfortable. And I know that it's not going to be an overnight miracle that happens with that. It's going to take some time. Refocusing our traffic efforts. I left the Madison Police as the traffic captain for the second largest city in the state. So traffic is my bread and butter. I'm no expert by any means, but it is something I enjoy, and it's something that I sort of honed some skills on. And knowing the impacts of police and traffic enforcement and how that impacts certain segments of the community is something that I'm not naive on, and it's something that I take very seriously. I was just asked to be a part of a work group that is attached to the Traffic Commission's subcommittee on racial disparity. So I think I chair our first meeting in a couple of weeks here to start talking about what efforts law enforcement can do to address some of these disparities, specifically law enforcement can do. And so that's something that I will be challenged to take on, but looking forward to those discussions. But in our little world here, I call us little, our little world here, there's some immediate change that I can do. And that is, instead of saying, hey, it's a free for all, officers, give better direction and give the reasons why we need to focus on that direction. What I mean by that is that I think it was like week one of my start here, I implemented a change in which our traffic initiatives, all the thousands of dollars we get from the state to do grant work, OWI enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, speed enforcement, I have directed that enforcement is focused on the driving behavior, not your DL status, not your license plate light that's out, hazardous driving behavior. And I also provided a list of what that behavior encompasses in order to help provide better clarity as to exactly what this new chief is meaning by saying hazardous driving behavior. But I also explained why that's important and why we have and how we have an impact on some of the desperate impacts that we're seeing out here in Dane County, which, as you all know, is some of the worst in the state. So we need to up our game, and I need to do my part, not only as chief, but I'll be honest with you, as a Black gay chief, to say I'm doing something and to actually talk the talk and walk the walk. So these are some of the things that I'm trying to do. I have a whole list of things that I think are steps that we've taken to move us in the right direction of becoming a more safe, a more welcoming community for all. But I don't want to, like I warned you, Jason, I don't want to take up all of this committee's time, the balance of time. So I think what I'll do is I'll see if there's any questions or any points that I may talk on that folks might have, Jason, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. So floor is open for anybody to ask questions or follow-ups of the chief.
Yeah, I had a question. What was, when you started working here, what was the thing that made you feel the most welcome starting a new position in Monona?
I had several, well, I had one older person and I had several members of the community come out and say, first of all, welcome, even before I got here, to reach out and say welcome. And then to very kindly and gently to the new guy and gracefully identify some of our needs and concerns and struggles in our community. And that at least gave me a better, like, okay, mission focus. Thank you for the welcome. I feel like we're on the same page. Let's work on these issues here, but I'm gonna need some help. And then, to be honest, council, the mayor, city administrator, and knowing that, you know, we had already had this partnership with Nehemiah, and, you know, the community was already looking at some of these issues that I sort of walked in hoping to build on. I think that was very welcoming to me. Does that answer your question? Okay. This is what happens when you talk too much.
Not at all.
I have a question. The group is just getting, we're kind of just at the point where they're pulling together specific recommendations in a number of areas and getting ready to issue a final report. One of the main reasons, kind of what got the ball rolling with all these partnerships in this committee was, you know, action spurred after that Arrowhead Drive incident, and that's referenced in a lot of documents. So I guess just thinking from that perspective and all the things that you've learned, is there anything that you would like to see in particular in the recommendations, or any directions that you're hoping will come out of that report?
Yeah, thank you. I just think that that's a tough question, Karen, and here's why. Partly,
Sorry to put you on the spot, but
hey, listen, this is what you pay me to do. No, it's challenging because, you know, due respect to the former chief, we're philosophically, I think, different in a lot of respect, and just operationally, and again, I'm not knocking. I just think we're different. I have very close friends who, you know, I'm just very different, sort of operationally, and how we go about achieving the same goal. I think, you know, my path on that is just a continued discussion on slowing things down, and continued discussions on, you know, what is the best possible resolution for the situation. But you know what, if I'm to be honest, and I know people get frustrated when they hear this part of my answer, is it can't just all be on us as PD. The community needs to learn too. And the community needs to learn, why are you calling? And the community needs to have an appreciation for the impacts of involving police in certain situations, and how that makes folks like me feel. You know, I am blessed as a kid to have a really decent car right now, right? Only took me 43 years. But not everybody's this fortunate. And so I tell people, listen, my tint is legal. I got both plates on my car. I know every light is working on that car. But when I get in that car and I take off my uniform, I feel a certain way. I feel a certain way. And I see a police car behind me, and it's like, man, do I know that person? Do I not know that person? What agency is that? yeah, and that's me as a cop. And I hear the stories from people who aren't cops, who look like me, tell these stories. And that's just, we need to overcome that. It's gonna be a challenge. It's gonna be a challenge. But at least I want to say, folks traveling through Monona, folks driving through Monona, folks living in Monona, you're not going to be able to take that away from everyone, those feelings, because police are everywhere and there's bad police. But I at least want people to breathe a sigh of relief when they come to Monona. Oh, thank goodness I'm in Monona now. I can't say that about other communities I drive to. I go the speed 1 mile below the speed limit, praying to get to the next town.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm going to be put on blast, but that's okay. That's okay. And listen, I've had people come to me and say, Chief, I think there's some loud people in the community, right? Everything's fine. Everything's good. Back to blue. I appreciate you back in the blue. I want y'all back to blue, right? You want your community to be safe. I hope that there's at least an agreement that there's a role for police and society, right? I'm all about that. And we have a tough job. My officers and dispatchers, they need the support, because the stuff they see and do is damaging. The stress levels, the trauma, the vicarious trauma, it's hard. This is why you guys allow us to retire so soon, because we live shorter lives. So I appreciate the support that's needed, but I'm not going to be that guy that says everything's okay. And I think that's, where you have some of us newbies coming into the mix, the sheriff and others, who are very much in line to say it's okay to say we need to work on some of these things and actually do the work. I'm not, like I said, we're going to disagree on some things, but I think we at least have the same sort of end goal in sight.
One more question. And why did you specifically choose Monona? Were there other option or what was kind of the motivation behind that?
Some of it is I believe at my former job, I reached what I would consider a professional plateau. It's a nice PC way to say that. I think that, Madison changed, and the department changed, and the calls for service changed. I could have done sort of the type of work I was doing in Madison at a certain level back home, and where I really didn't feel like I was making a huge impact. Now, there's a lot of good work being done at Madison PD with a lot of good people. I just met with a couple this morning, but the dynamics have changed tremendously in the short time that I worked there, in sort of how they go about community policing and what they've sort of redefined community policing under a few different chiefs. I'll be completely candid and tell you that I would not be here without Mike Koval, but Mike Koval didn't see eye to eye on some things, and he and I have had some disagreements, professional disagreements about a couple of things, which is okay. But at the end of the day, Mike Koval was my boss, right? I wanted to be the boss. I was, put your money where your mouth is sort of guy. And I saw an opportunity here in Monona, and I've had friends that lived here. I know most of the restaurants and establishments here because I frequent them so many times. I've enjoyed the parks. I've done Lake Loop. I don't know how many times trying to be in shape. I was familiar enough with Monona, and professionally I'd worked with Monona PD prior to this even becoming an option, so I knew of Monona. But you're right, like I was first aiming at, okay, where do I go up, right? Where can I go someplace where I can truly feel I've made an impact and have been sort of one of the many agents of change that are trying to do some things, and this presented itself to be the best opportunity for me. In full candor, this was a pay cut for me. There were other opportunities elsewhere that I was, I don't want to say recruited, but I'll say encouraged to apply for. I didn't do a single one of them. This is the only process I put in for, and I don't know if I'm in my honeymoon phase or not, but I've enjoyed it since day one. And Chris can attest to that, because we were just talking about how much I've enjoyed my time here so far. Not without its challenges, but it's been everything that I hoped it would be so far.
Chief, I don't know if I have a question, but I'll just express a thought and see if you have any reactions, or see if you have any sympathetic feelings about this situation. And maybe it relates to your priority on hiring, and you're trying to bring more diversity into policing in a very white community. And so, our work group is responding to an event that just showed everybody explicitly what many people understood implicitly, or more in their own personal experience, that Monona can be an unwelcoming place to some of us. And so in a sense, we're starting at this point where we have a very, just such an overwhelmingly white community. In a sense, it provides us with an opportunity to try to address these issues before there is more overt conflict, because we haven't gotten there yet, because there are just so few Blacks and other people of color. Everything's very easy to kind of keep on the lowdown, so we're trying to promote not just more inclusivity, but one of the things we may be saying is we just want Monona to be more diverse. Just like a company might want its workforce to be more diverse, we might be out there saying we need more people of color in this community for the community to fulfill its promise and be just the best it can be. But it's always, to me, it's always difficult when you're starting from a base of so few people of color, trying to build up from there. I mean, so it's an opportunity in one sense, but there isn't this like critical mass of voices of color already kind of clamoring for fair treatment. We don't have that, we got to build up to even that point. So that's what I think about a lot. And I don't know whether you can relate to that or have any reactions.
Jason, I'm 1.5 Black persons in this building. I get it. But it helps when you have people who are welcoming, people who reach out and say, hey, I don't know if you've ever thought about working here, but we would really appreciate your contributions to the team. And here's why. Symbolism is important too. Having a city that blasts everywhere how much they appreciate, better word, celebrate diversity in everything that they do. My first day, y'all flew the pride flag. You corrected the right version of the pride flag, but you flew the pride flag. I mean, that was so awesome for not only me, my mom, right? My wonderful little Puerto Rican Chicago Catholic mom, my friends who came, they knew I was okay. They didn't know much about Monona, but they saw that and they knew I'd be okay, right? Imagine sort of expanding on that same concept of just creating sort of this, advertisement of you are welcome. But in fact, we want you to come here. You are welcome here. I think that that's maybe something the city can put a little focus on. But in terms of, me now as a department head and something that, I am trying to address here incrementally, because change takes time, but this whole cliche about checking the box, like I want to be able to say, did I look at this? Did I look at this? Did I evaluate this? Did I make sure that I covered this? I want to be able to check boxes to be sure I did everything I could to do that outreach, to do everything I could to make it a welcoming place, to create that sort of environment. And so maybe this committee, and Jason, you and I talked about this a little bit when we met, this committee can help come up with a formula for that, so that that can be, something that all department heads can utilize, sort of an equity toolkit, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Great. Thanks for your thoughts. I really enjoyed hearing you address what I said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll just say that it's a little overdue, so I apologize for getting here late. I should have forced on my invitation earlier. But thank you for welcoming me formally. Thank you. And then I that point I made about help, I'm not going to let y'all off easy. I know when I joined in, there were a lot of tasks that were divvied out, so I think that this is bad timing. But listen, when it comes to recruitment, in my mind, it's a complex solution, but you come with a unique perspective, right? I need to involve people who are part of the hiring process to lend their perspective. If you line a bunch of cops in a room, they're gonna, oh, this person's not a good cop because of X, Y, and Z. You line a bunch of heterosexual white men in the room, they're gonna come with a certain perspective as well. I need some diversity to be represented in our hiring process that aren't necessarily cops. And sometimes that's a challenge because there's a time commitment, right? You might have to dedicate a day. How many of us have a whole day in which we can dedicate? But if I give you enough time, notice, and you know of somebody who might be a good person to be a part of a hiring panel or an interview panel, for example, and can lend their opinion on why, and insight as to why they believe that candidate gave great answers that nobody else saw, that's what I need. And so maybe you all please can consider either yourselves or somebody who might be good candidates for our hiring process panels and whatever other sort of mechanisms that will be implemented for that. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your asking. Thank you very much for putting that out.
Thank you. And I know that you've used my hubby on one of your hiring panels, and he found it to be a good experience in terms of being able to give community input. I know we're getting short of time here. I do have one question, and maybe it's a different venue. It should be discussed on the role of the school resource officer. Do you look at if they have a child psychology background or a teaching certificate or any extra background in dealing with child psychology? So they're coming from more just than a law enforcement background. They either have a social worker, educational, or child psych background.
Yeah, so not necessarily do they have the initials behind their name type of education, but are they willing to receive that training, or do they seem as if they're fit to be the right person for that job if given the additional tools and training of the trade? I 100% agree. Our SRO now, the school provides training for our SRO, and internally we look for additional training. He's actually going to a training next week in Green Bay. I don't know if, we do have cops in society who were former social workers, but not everyone has that background. I don't have that background. I'm a criminal justice major because I love this stuff and it was easy for me. And I knew I was going to get through college, right? But I do have a passion for, community engagement and understanding trauma. And, so I don't want to not include folks if they don't have that educational background, but it's just got to be, it's a complicated answer, Mary Ann. It's got to be the right person for the right job. I hate to give you that, but it really, that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. I do remember this goes back to the very early days of David Cooper with Madison, but they were actually recruiting school teachers and social workers to join the police department back back then.
Yeah.
It was a real culture shift.
We need them. Everyone needs them. The school needs them. They're in high demand. And if I would have taken a different route when I was young, that's probably what I would have done versus criminal justice. But
Thank you very much, Chief. Thanks again for spending the time with us. It's a great pleasure for us, and we wish you well. I just want to repeat again, if you ever have any thoughts or inspirations that you might think would be helpful to the work we're doing in any way, we are all ears, and please just get those ideas to me or to Alder Goforth or to Brian, and we'll make sure they're spread out to the rest of the members. Love to hear from you.
we'll do. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Thanks for your commitment. And I hope to see you soon. Right. All
Yeah.
right. Take care,
All
everyone.
right, take care. Bye-bye. All right. Thanks, everybody. I think we are done. Is that right? Okay.
Jason,
Yeah,
can
please.
I make one quick announcement?
Yes, sure.
Just because this group has mentioned that they enjoyed the Momentum Urban Arts Festival. I'm working with the Madison Public Art Project to bring up an art project to Monona called Vibrant Hydrants, where we'll recruit underrepresented artists to paint 20 fire hydrants in the city. And those artists will be well compensated. And then we will be rolling that out on September 11th. And then we will do artist talks. So an artist will be at each of those hydrants and talking about if it was their cultural roots or what their inspiration was for the hydrant. And some of that is even maybe your perspective of your culture and the significance of 9/11 and what happened in our country. And so we're presenting that on February 2nd at the Public Works Commission at 6:30 p.m. We are getting resistance. We're getting comments that artwork does not belong on fire hydrants. And so it's looking like it might get shot down before we even get there. But if anyone wants to support that, you can email the Public Works Committee. If you go to the city's website, there's an I want to page, contact, and then you can contact the department. That would be Public Works or the fire department. And we'd love to get your support because I think it could be a really cool project for Monona.
Thanks. What's the date that you said it's coming up?
February 2nd at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. And that agenda is already posted on the city's homepage.
Okay. And that was in front of the Public Works Committee?
Yeah, Public Works
Yeah.
Commission. So yeah, and if you wanted to make a statement there, they'll have appearances right at the beginning of the meeting.
Jason, did we have a report from the parent group?
Yeah, right. Next meeting. So there is feedback, and Jade and Raquel are working on putting together the feedback from that group. So we'll spend some time next meeting on that. Jade or Raquel, did you want to say anything about that?
Nope, just to look forward to February, the date of our next meeting.
Right. Okay.
February 3rd.
February 3rd. Get excited.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, I think I hear a motion to adjourn out there somewhere, and a second. We all good? All right. Take care, everybody.
I'll move to adjourn.
Yeah, okay.
Just so we get it down, so Brian can get that in his minutes.
I second it.
That's right. It's good to have
All in
minutes.
favor.
All right. Okay. Take
night,
care, everybody.
everyone.
Thanks again for your participation
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all.